Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Continue.
Oh, no worries, Eric. So we're here to talk about the new Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And for those of you who were at the Traffic Safety Summit last week, this is a very similar presentation to what you would have seen there. But we'll go through it quickly so we have some time for our discussion. So here's a roadmap of what we're going to go through today. First, how are we doing? What did we find? Where do we start? And our goals and strategies. So current trends, sorry, one second, I'm looking at a weird screen here. So we have had a slight decrease in fatalities between 24 and 25. So that's good news. However, you'll see that our non-motorist fatalities did go up over that time between the first half of 2024 and the first half of 2025. And I also added on here the top 10 counties for fatalities, and you'll see highlighted there which one of those are in the DRCOG region. And mostly that's because it's higher population in those areas, but that shows that there is a good opportunity to reduce fatalities in this region in particular. For serious injuries, it's much the same. We've seen slight decreases between the first half of 2024 and the first half of 2025, and that's true for both motorists and non-motorists for those serious injuries. Similarly, 6 of the top 10 counties are in the DRCOG region, again, mostly due to higher population, but provides the opportunity. Even though we've had this decrease over the last year, we've still in recent years had all-time highs for both fatalities and serious injuries in Colorado. So this graph you'll see on the bottom in the light blue is fatalities, and then in the darker blue is serious injuries. And this yellow circle shows the all-time high for both fatalities happened in 2022, and then for serious injuries in 2023. And if you look at this top line, that is the rate normalized by vehicle miles traveled, and you still see significant increases over the last decade. So this is definitely something we want to address. While we're not dismissing our recent trends of moving downward, we still have a long way to go. So where do we start in addressing fatalities and serious injuries? At the statewide level, we're looking at the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. What is a Strategic Highway Safety Plan? It's a statewide coordinated plan. Collaboration is key with this plan. It's comprehensive, so it's not just engineering strategies. It is engineering and behavior side, whether that's through enforcement, education, public health. We're really tying those two pieces together of your engineering and planning, or kind of built environment side, and your behavioral side. The SHSP identifies our key safety needs and guides our investment decisions. We're looking for the biggest bang for our buck. What is the highest potential to reduce those fatalities and serious injuries? The mission and vision of the SHSP, our vision is Vision Zero. I know this is a Vision Zero group, so you guys understand what Vision Zero is and why it's important. We believe in a future where all people using any transportation mode arrive at their destination safely. We really believe that that's possible. It's only possible through incremental improvements like the one we saw from 24 to 25, but we do believe we're going to get there eventually. And the mission, how we're going to get there, is to cooperatively implement these strategies between our state agencies, our different industries, and between state and local agencies. So the safe system approach, hopefully many of you are familiar with this. This has been adapted for Colorado, so it's a little bit different than FHWA's. We have adopted the same 5 principles, but our elements are slightly different. So we have safe driving, safe people, safe roads, post-crash care, but we have the safety culture, which is really what's tying this together. And that's a really important element to us is this, what are our beliefs and how is that impacting our culture and how it's impacting safety in Colorado. So our SHSP, it's new this year, but it is an every 5-year plan. So we're building off of success that we made in 2020. However, a lot has changed since 2020. 2020 was our COVID year. This was adopted in April of 2020, the previous plan. And so we had to kind of think on the fly a lot with how we were going to implement our previous plan. So this year we have really taken a look at what's gone well since our previous plan and what might we need to change because of our changing situation. And we're also looking at the SHSP as a continuous process. So you'll see this graphic in the top left here of plan, implement, report, and evaluate. This is a continuous process we want to do in between plans. So the plan, maybe that's every 5 years, but we want to be doing this implementing, reporting, and evaluating in between to make sure that we're making progress on this. And Gabby will talk a little bit later about our planning process as well and how we're doing that in between our 5-year plans. So what did we find as we did this SHSP development? Well, the first thing we did before we even did our data analysis is we talked to our stakeholders. And some of you were probably at our workshop that we did in Denver last September. And these were some of the themes that we got. So we went all around the state and we asked our stakeholders about what their safety concerns were and what they think is most important for the state to take a look at. And we used that information and tied it together with our data analysis. We're able to take a look at, okay, these are what our stakeholders are concerned about. What does the data tell us about that particular thing? And using both our feedback from stakeholders and our data, we came up with these 20 focus areas under each of our 5 emphasis areas. So you'll see here some focus areas like this. Sorry, this middle one should be labeled safe people. But this is our different user groups. And then we also have under safe roads, what are some of our locations or types of crashes that we're looking at. Safe driving is focused on these different behaviors. So you kind of see how we have those organized. Then we took those focus areas and we said, okay, what proportion? So this is by percentage of total crashes in yellow and then percentage of fatal and serious injury crashes in that medium blue there. So what are our highest 4 percentages of our crashes? So we know which ones we need to focus on or what we might have the highest impact towards. So you'll see intersections is the top. And then also we have off systems. So these are non-state highway crashes are also very high. But then we were also able to pull out, for instance, motorcycles and pedestrians, where maybe they have a small percentage of all crashes, but a very high percentage of our fatal and serious injury crashes. Then we also took a look at urban versus rural, kind of compared what are the similarities and differences. So some of the differences is our top crash type, intersections at urban, and lane departures in rural. But then some of the similarities are those off-system or local jurisdiction crashes. So that kind of helped us to be able to determine what our strategies are. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gabby to talk about our goals and strategies.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Melody. So we're going to transition a little bit into what do we do now that we have our focus areas, we have our emphasis areas, and we also have some of our data. And the first item that we want to take a look at are those targets. So, where are we trying to get to in order to get that incremental change down to 0? So at the top, you can see serious injuries, and at the bottom, you can see fatalities. That dark blue line is our actual data collection with preliminary data in that dashed blue line. And then in our dashed red line, you can see a 5% reduction year over year, moving all the way down to 2029. This aligns with other Colorado state plans, and it allows us to plan for incremental decreases in crashes. Next slide, please. This next slide is for pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities and serious injuries. Here we do not break out serious injuries and fatalities, we put them together, but you can see the same type of data here. Again, that dashed line is going to demonstrate a 5% year over year reduction down to 2029. And again, this will apply for all of our focus areas. All of our focus areas are looking at a 5% reduction year over year. Next slide, please. So here are our total, I believe, 57 strategies. It's a little blurry on here, but the intent of the slide is not for you to read all the strategies, but just to demonstrate the amount of strategies that we have for each focus area, as well as how many strategies we have to basically implement in the next 5 years. We did cut down quite a lot. We did a lot of combination. We worked very strongly with our stakeholder engagement and our data analysis to determine what strategies are most effective for reducing serious injuries and fatality crashes. You can see that our safe people area has 22 strategies, so that's definitely our largest. And you can see a lot of those fall into our VRUs. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about a little bit of implementation and kind of what do we do with these strategies? We've got targets, we've got strategies, we've got data, we've got stakeholders. Like, what do we do with it all together? Next slide, please. So this is where Advancing Transportation Safety, or ATS, comes in. So some of you may be familiar with ATS, but ATS is our statewide collaborative effort, and it's led by CDOT, but with a ton of engagement from other state agencies, local agencies, advocacy groups, academic groups, and private entities. And ATS serves as the implementation body of the SHSP. So this is the group of stakeholders that are implementing the SHSP strategies and determining how implementation will go over the next 5 years. Along with that, we do have a couple of other goals alongside that implementation, which is increasing a culture of safety, strengthening and cultivating partnerships, increasing coordination, and implementing effective and data-proven safety countermeasures. So ATS is kind of that working group that allows us to implement the SHSP throughout the state. Next slide, please. But how do we do that? We've got ATS and we've got all these strategies. Where do we start? So for those of you familiar with ATS, this might be a reminder, but we do have 5 emphasis area working groups. So all of our components of the safe system approach you can see in that diagram on your right. We have a stakeholder working group associated with each area, as well as a steering committee. So each of these emphasis areas contains a group of stakeholders that are dedicating their time to implementing the SHSP. We have them volunteer to be champions of strategies and then work with them to create action plans. These meetings happen quarterly, and it allows our stakeholders to meet and discuss these strategies and how implementation is going. Next slide, please. This year, we're trying something a little different. Last round when we published the SHSP, also referred to as the STSP, it was published and adopted in 2020, April of 2020. So you can imagine that a lot of the actions that we had identified in 2020, early 2020, probably weren't as easy to implement in the following months. So what we wanted to do is to build a more flexible and malleable structure that allows us as the ATS team, as well as our champions of our strategies, as well as our stakeholders, to be able to adopt these strategies to our current conditions. So I can adapt to public health crises, adapt to new trends in data, adapt to new technologies. So while we have strategies, those 57 strategies identified throughout the plan, we also wanted to make sure that the actions underneath these strategies could be changed depending on the environment and staffing. So we had all of our champions go through basically an annual action planning cycle, and we do this with our emphasis area groups and then with our champions as well. So we start by assessing the readiness of a strategy, and then through that process, we select our high readiness strategies. These are strategies that have more political will. They probably already have a champion assigned. There might be a funding source. And we decide that we're going to create action plans, these one-year action plans for each strategy. And again, so this is only, in this case, it's from June of 2025 to June of 2026. All of these action plans for each strategy that was selected gets compiled into one giant action plan for approval by the steering committee. And then it's moved on to implementation. So throughout the year, we're going to check in with our champions and the teams that are implementing these strategies and see how their one-year action plan is going. At the end of the year, we'll do an end of the year review and, assess how we did. What do our performance measures look like? Do we meet the outcomes that our teams have set? And kind of where do we need to go for the following year? Next slide, please. And so this is an example action plan. I'm not going to go through it in depth because I know we don't have a ton of time today. But this is an example of what a brief version of a one-year action plan would look like. This is our Safety Culture 5 strategy. It's in our organizational safety culture area, and it's about the Traffic Safety Summit. It's enhancing collaboration and information sharing among safety professionals. You can see that Melody is one of our champions, and she developed 3 outcomes down below. And so at the end of the year, Melody is going to look at this action plan, decide if they met their outcomes, and then determine what the action plan needs to be for the following year, if the outcomes need to be changed, if they need to be redone, if there's something missing, or if there's any way we can improve the strategy in any way. Next slide, please. And with that, we did fully finalize our 2025 action plan. We put in an overview of current data trends and desired targets for the fiscal year for our steering committee. And then we did end up, out of the 57 strategies, we selected 39 to have developed action plans to move forward for this year. Next slide, please. And with that, that is the roadmap that we took you down. So we went through looking at the data trends and where we're starting, kind of what we found through that process, how we set our goals and strategies, and then what's next for this upcoming year. On the next slide, you'll see, I believe, contact information for Melody and myself, as well as a QR code to read the SHSP. We do also have a number of physical copies, so if you do not want to read it online or you're having issues with some access, let Melody or myself know, and we can arrange you to borrow the copy. And with that, I'm also going to drop it in the chat real quick, so feel free to check that out and let us know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Gabby and Melody. Does anybody have any questions? We have time for maybe 1 or 2 for CDOT. Greg.
Hello, I'm going to have to admit that I didn't read the document, but something that I wonder if it's in line with the promotion of safety culture when we see damaged or destroy roadway safety devices, and then an orange cone is just placed in front of it, is it kind of, there's the cognitive dissonance there for me. If we want to promote safety, let's quickly fix those devices on the roadway.
Thanks, Greg. Maintenance, I think, is a very important part of safety. And like you said, it's an important part of safety culture for CDOT as an organization. Something that we're working on. Organizational safety culture is one of our strategies. I'm not going to claim to be perfect and say we at CDOT have a perfect safety culture, because it's something we're working on. And I think it's something I want to encourage all of the organizations that are represented here today also to look at their own organizations, and we're doing it at CDOT, and say, okay, where are areas where we can improve our culture? And maintenance at CDOT is one of those areas. So yeah, that's what I would say to that is, it's a work in progress.
Catherine?
Yeah, Melody and Gabby, thank you guys so much. Our next, discussion is going to be about speed management, and so I was curious about the decision to, I think it was to remove speed from the safe systems like pie chart, and what the discussion was behind that.
Yeah, I can certainly talk about that. What we did with speed is we moved it under 2 different areas. So one is under safe driving, as speeding as a behavior of, knowing what the speed limit is and electing to surpass it. And then the other element is speed as it relates to design. And we moved that over under safe roads. And I think that's, I don't know what the following presentations are going to be, but I think that's what they're going to fall under. And so that's what we did with speed. We kind of moved it under each of those just because of where the types of strategies and countermeasures fall under when it comes to speeding, of being like, okay, well, there are some that are on this education, behavior, kind of culture side, and then there's some on, okay, well, we need to look at how we build and design and sign and traffic calming for our roadways, and kind of split it up that way. So we're not ignoring it. We just kind of moved it under these two different elements, and we expanded safe driving to include many different driving behaviors. I see a question in the chat as well about targeting educating the next generation of drivers. Drivers education is one of our strategies. We're working with the DMV on what does that look like in the future. It was definitely an area that came up in our workshops and something that we're looking at. For those of you who did come to the Safety Summit last week, we had a local teen action board from Fountain come and kind of talk about what does driving behavior look like among teens, and what is the culture, and how do you communicate effectively with teens. So it's a very interesting area. I would say it's an emerging area that we are looking at. Again, we've got a ways to go, but it's definitely on our radar.
And we have a number of strategies too that might not be explicitly for young drivers, but we do have a lot of strategies on education, specifically through the media campaigns that are run throughout the state. Again, that's things like impaired driving, occupant protection, things of that nature. So we do have a number of other strategies that encourage public education as well. So maybe it's not targeted young drivers specifically, but there is other educational strategies that we included in the plan.
All right, it's awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing this with us. Oh, Lisa, do you have a quick follow-up?
I do.
Clarification?
Yeah, I do. Thank you so much. I once, a few years ago, was in our TSMO office, which is no longer, but that was our traffic systems management operations. And one of the things we were trying to do was interact with the DMV to update their driver education manual. And it was hard to do. And there were several things our traffic engineers wanted to add into the driver's education manual about new technologies that we were using at CDOT and how to educate drivers on that. So I would love to see that as a strategy where we could continue that conversation with them to get the handbook updated with some of the new like ITS features we're using, so the drivers can better understand what those technologies do and mean. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, we do have a strategy specifically for improving drivers' education, which would fall right in line with that request for looking at the handbook. They did just recently update the handbook, Melody, correct me if I'm wrong, but about a year ago. So right now we're trying to evaluate what those changes did for the classroom experience and how that's changed. They've expressed, we work with DOR very closely, specifically with our DMV partners. And one of their issues that they run into is that there's just not enough time in their allotted classes to include everything. But that is one of the strategies that is on hold because we are assessing that recent change to see what that is, but it is included in the SHSP as an item of note. So great idea.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gabby. Yeah, I think it was even just updated in January. So it's very recent. So we kind of want to see what that looks like. And then there's also a new law going into effect that will be changing what driver's education looks like in, I think it's 2027. So, we definitely want to be addressing this and looking at this in this next 5-year cycle. But as for this first year, it's something that we're kind of waiting to see what the effects are of recent changes.
Right, it's awesome. Cool. Well, again, thank you so much, Melody and Gabby, for our questions. Real quick, I did love the flag of the Safety Summit as one of the strategies. And if anyone didn't get the chance to go this last week, I would highly recommend trying to go next year. If you can't make it for the whole 2 days, I've always found it really valuable, and I really thank the team at CDOT for putting it on. With that, I think the next thing, I want to turn the meeting over to Catherine.
All right, thanks, Eric. So for this meeting's, what we're calling peer exchange, the topic is going to be about speed management. And so the origins are this. So if you might remember back to the Mentimeter survey that we took in our April working group meeting, as part of that, we asked about topics. Speed management was the topic that was of most interest to this working group. And there's also a lot of interest in hearing from your peers in local communities and about best practices with these topics. And so I kind of just wanted to preface it for hearing from these local communities and preface the importance of speed. So, and the first thing is, I think speed and speed management is sometimes I've heard it say, is this just a new fad? Is this just one of these new, graphics and these new E's or whatever it is that we have to learn? And really, I think the focus on speed is going back to the basics, going back to ancient basics from Newton's law in the 1600s. And it really goes back to the fundamentals of traffic safety, which is all about managing kinetic energy. You don't have an injury or a fatality without speed and without the transfer of kinetic energy beyond what a person or a vehicle can tolerate. And so it's about going back to the fundamentals of protecting people. And just wanting to point out that even moderate speeds of 30 to 40 miles an hour can often be deadly when there's a significant difference in vehicle weights or, vehicle to pedestrian. When a person is unprotected, so if they're not wearing a seatbelt, because that also helps with kinetic energy, combating those forces. And then also when it's like a side impact crash between a higher speed vehicle and a lower speed vehicle. And now I'm not a physics expert, but some of you might have taken those classes where you've seen, the arrow diagrams, and a lot of that has to do with basically the way that energy is transferred in those crashes, especially if the cross car isn't moving very fast. It's almost treated like a stationary object. And so all of that energy from the fast moving vehicle on the through lane is then transferred into that vehicle, and you just see a lot more impacts. I think as some of the other speakers will talk about, speed also impacts stopping distance and field of vision. And so just wanting to reiterate that managing kinetic energy and speed and building in redundant safe measures is really the fundamentals of keeping people safe. And if we are having higher speeds, you just have to build in a lot more redundancy, a lot more cushion to be able to tolerate those higher speeds. That's where you get those crash cushions. That's where, we built in safety features on cars like the crumple zones at the front of cars is in order to try to tolerate those higher speeds, but even those aren't 100% effective. So that's why, FHWA has identified removing severe conflict points and reducing vehicle speeds at the top of their roadway design system hierarchy. So next, I'm really excited for these presentations. First, we're going to hear about roundabouts in Castle Rock, and then we're going to hear about how Denver is working to manage speeds on its Hindry network. This first one from Castle Rock, before I turn it over, it really has me thinking about this idea that I'm interested in pursuing, which is what would it look like if communities had a safety first policy? If instead of having to warrant the safe treatment, what if they had to warrant, what if they started with the most safe treatment and then warranted the less safe treatment, either because it wasn't feasible or because of, other reasons, but starting with a safe treatment. And so I love what Castle Rock's doing here, and I'm excited for you all to hear about it as well. So with that, Jacob, are you ready to present?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. All right.
I'm going to try and share my screen. Can you see my presentation there?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm Jacob Vargas, for those of you that don't know me. Been with the town since 2014, involved with traffic signal programs, traffic safety, operations and maintenance of those items, and of course, planning and implementation of roundabouts. Tom Reif's also on the call today, and he's the town's transportation planner, responsible for our transportation master plan, as well as development TIA reviews, which is an important part of our presentation, as well as multimodal programs and our traffic calming program. So thanks for having us, Catherine, setting this up. So why roundabouts? And of course, I have my the principles of the safe system approach on the screen. To us, the roundabout is the poster child of a safe system approach, right? They proactively reduce the opportunity for severe and fatal injury crashes. Those are the broadside and approach turn. They slow traffic to survivable speeds when there is a crash. It reduces the conflicts between users, so it's easier for users to avoid and react to other user behaviors. And pedestrians can pay attention to each travel lane that they cross, as well as navigate it more successfully. And then it's also right sizing for all users, especially in the off-peak period, which is a majority of time managing these facilities. And there are other benefits as well, like reducing emissions, saving fuel, and of course, reducing delay, which the public appreciates. So a little bit about Castle Rock's history with roundabouts. The first one was built, and I think this is a part of our success. It's not something that happened overnight. It's been going on for 20 years. The first roundabout was built in a residential area up in Sapphire Point at a residential collector intersection. And you'll notice in this early design in 2005, there were no entry angles or consideration for that, and designs have come a long way since then. The town did its first capital improvement project on an arterial with a roundabout at Ridge Road and Enderud Boulevard in 2008, which I can talk a little bit more about. And then I've got another image here of it being expanded. So if you notice, Ridge Road became 4 lanes or 2 lanes in each direction later on. So here was kind of the before version where it's got 1 circulating lane and 1 through lane, 2 lanes on Ridge Road in this direction. And now it's the 4-lane roadway. And we're planning and reconstructing the roundabout, modify it to accommodate additional growth of traffic. So in 2012, we added to our transportation design criteria a roundabout criteria that requires collector and collector intersections and above to be considered for a roundabout first before signalization. And I think that's been an important part of our success with roundabouts. In 2016, we built an interchange roundabout at I-25. This is Castle Rock Parkway and I-25, the southbound off-ramp, and then the southbound on-ramp is I-25's over here on the east side. And in 2019, we built our first downtown mini roundabout. So this has a 65-foot outer diameter. It was a side street stop before this, and we were able to preserve a lot of parking in this area, which was important for the businesses and helped lead to successful implementation of that project. So currently, I've counted up 30 roundabouts in town. I did not realize we had that many. It feels like a lot for us. I could probably name, a dozen or so, but really we have 30. And I've got this residential area is the image here, where you can kind of see it's been growing for the last 10 years. A lot of houses have been built. And all the collector intersections are served by roundabouts, and it's been very successful for them. So we've got all kinds. We've got these residential, we've got arterial intersections, the interchange, and our urban core. In our most recent large development area, Dawson Trails, it's near the Crystal Valley interchange on the south side of town. They have 13 planned, and I think that it's while it's not constructed yet, their whole development plan revolves around roundabouts. And I think we've created that culture for our development community that roundabouts are going to be considered first, and they've embraced that and are planning to do that as a part of their large development. The town itself's committed to roundabouts on Plum Creek Parkway, which is an arterial that was recently widened on the east side of town. We built 2 roundabouts. We replaced a span wire signal with a roundabout, and at one of the collector intersections, we built a roundabout to accommodate that access. And then we've got 2 ongoing capital improvement roadway widening projects at Wolfensberger Road and 5th Street that will include roundabouts, including removing a signal at Woodlands Boulevard. And then lastly, we've planned over our 10-year CIP program to build a roundabout every 3 years, and not all of those locations have been determined. So we'll talk a little bit how we're planning to prioritize that. But we've really set the stage in our 10-year capital improvement program that roundabouts are going to be a part of that, and not just a traffic signal program. A little bit about performance and safety, which we're constantly being asked, to monitor our performance metrics and ensure we're maximizing those and the values that the community desires from our transportation network. This is Plum Creek and Gilbert. This was the intersection that had a signal, and as a part of the widening to Plum Creek to the east, we ended up designing and building a roundabout in this location. I like this image a lot. This is just an aerial image grab, but you can see, and I think you've seen this in maybe a lot of your signalized intersections, the side street traffic is waiting for the main line a majority of the day, and we've messed with signal timing and reducing the max split and detection and all that, and you really can't avoid this at all times of day when it's not needed. And so pre-conversion, we had a level service of C and D, which isn't too bad, but we did have 2 injury crashes, 8 total crashes, and those were a broadside and approach turn crash. So here's an image of the new intersection, now a roundabout. It's now level service AB. This does get worse at full build out of the town, but right now it's operating really well. We've reduced the injury crashes, so we don't have any more, and we've reduced the total crashes to 20% fewer. And the broadside and the approach turn we haven't had, right? Because we don't have that opportunity. The other intersection I wanted to talk about was that mini roundabout downtown. It improved from a DE to an AB, so you can kind of see the before and after pictures. Side street stop here, which had some delay in the afternoons, and now functions really well. The interesting thing about this roundabout is this is our fire station, and we had to work really well with our fire department. This whole entire center median is mountable, so this is like a truck apron, and fire trucks can drive straight over the top of the roundabout and get to where they need to go. There was concern that the public would do the same, and there'll be somebody every now and then that does that or doesn't understand what's going on. It is really well signed and really well marked, so people that are doing that are purposeful. And then you can see on snowy days, there's a track of tracks that go right over the middle. But that really hasn't been an issue in terms of safety of this intersection. It operates quite well. So as I said, we believe that roundabouts lower the risk of severe injury crashes, reduce conflicts, and operate well during those off-peak periods, which is a majority of the time. So cost is another factor you're probably thinking about. We talk about costs, we're referring to life cycle costs. So the initial construction, the maintenance, the operation, the replacement, and ultimately removal if needed. This is actually a new roundabout at the Crystal Valley interchange, so that the East Frontage Road is here and Crystal Valley Parkway is on this side. It currently, and I did a back of the envelope type calculation here. We have some good data on this. Over 40 years, I'm estimating about $2.2 million in signal operation and maintenance life cycle cost. Whereas the roundabout is the $2 million one-time cost. So in our eyes, it's a lower life cycle cost. And that really doesn't include fuel and emission savings, the retiming costs, that you're going to need to operate those traffic signals, as well as just greater quality of life, which is hard to put a cost to. If you had a fatality at an intersection, that cost is going to change quite a lot. And I think we're removing that opportunity for fatalities by constructing roundabouts. A couple of notes on, effective preventative maintenance in high truck traffic areas, and we use concrete, for the circulating lanes and the approach lanes. In our residential areas, we found asphalt works just fine. And then with the preventative maintenance that you need to do on a roundabout, it's occurring with the roadway maintenance that's going to be occurring anyway. So there's no extra or special maintenance that needs to occur with the roundabout other than the regular roadway maintenance that's occurring. And then in terms of markings, we've tried tape and paint, of course, and those are not going to hold up nearly as well with the turning motions and changing lanes and whatnot that you see in a roundabout. So we go with durable thermoplastic markings in all of our roundabouts, and the ones that were not constructed that way originally, we're converting those now. I think public perception's a key part of this conversation. I mentioned the 2008 roundabout that was built originally as a part of a capital improvement project. There was a meeting at a local grocery store facility, and there was a lot of skepticism from the public. This was at Ridge Road and Inderud. And the issue was that there was a safety issue. We had high-speed traffic on Ridge Road, 45 miles an hour. And there's a lot of delay on the side street, and that safety issue was kind of a driving factor of building a roundabout. It turned out to be a huge success, is very popular, and it worked well, and it reduced the safety issue. So we built on that momentum from there. I think now our residents are requesting and expecting roundabouts instead of a new signal when we're doing a construction project. We're getting that from both council members and residents. Hey, you're building a new signal. Why didn't you put in a roundabout? And so we have included in our warrant study process for traffic signals, there is a roundabout section, and that is involved in that. There are times when we are not building a roundabout and we have to build a traffic signal. It's usually because there's right-of-way or roadway constraints, like a large drainage area or a private property encroachment that wouldn't allow a roundabout to fit in the area. It's high turn lanes, so like multiple left turn lanes from a side street and a main street, so that it just doesn't operate as well as a roundabout. So there are instances where roundabouts are not the best solution, and we're having to justify and explain that to the community when we're not choosing a roundabout. I think our success with the public has also been the education that's gone into building new roundabouts. We have a lot of informational videos, not only on how to drive one, which I think Catherine found online. There's a great video of the wingman helping you drive through a roundabout that we've got. At all of our CIP project open houses, we have a board on the intersection control that explains the pros and cons of a roundabout and the benefits that we are hoping to see from that construction, and really focus on the values that the community is looking for and how well the roundabout is able to meet those over other alternatives. Anytime we have a face-to-face opportunity to explain the benefits of a roundabout, we're trying to capitalize on that and share that with the community, and I think they've really embraced that quite well. There are instances where the public has been very against roundabouts, so we acknowledge that as well. We did have an intersection in not outskirts, but on the edge of town that we wanted to build a roundabout. We thought it was the best option, and they were pretty against it from a large group of people, and that momentum was not conducive to building a roundabout. And when we looked at it, the traffic signal operated equally as well, and we really had no reason not to go with the signal option, and we chose to do that. Okay, roundabouts on the development side. I mentioned the 2012 TDCM that roundabouts are required for collector class roadways and above, unless it's proven unfeasible. I really can't think of an instance where it was unfeasible. Tom's on the call too, so if he has something he can think of, but for the most part, we're requiring that. This is an image of an intersection that needed improvements, and they wanted to do a signal, but we required them to do a roundabout, and that's what they constructed. When housing permits are pulled, building permits are pulled, there's an impact fee from those developments that helps fund our capital improvement projects. So it's funding the broader network, but otherwise, a majority of our infrastructure is built by the development community. And I think that developer resistance is declining. Like I mentioned, the Dawson Trails community, they've really embraced it. They see the benefits. And I think most savvy and knowledgeable developers understand roundabouts, that they're in the long term are going to be better for the communities they're trying to build. Less experienced developers may need a little more education from us about roundabouts. And when in doubt, that criteria is very helpful to prove the point and help get the infrastructure we're looking for. Sorry, I jumped ahead there. Okay, other lessons learned. Well-designed roundabouts save lives. If you get nothing else out of my presentation, I hope that's it. It is the poster child of the safe system approach. I found this research report 1043 Guide for Roundabouts was recently updated in 23. If you have not been using that or haven't found that, please incorporate that into your practice. There's some great charts that I've found really helpful about how many lanes and volume that's using the area, the intersection, to guide what type of traffic control is best. And there's a lot of great information on the best practices for roundabouts. We've found that grades over 4% are challenging for drainage and operations, and they're unsafe for motorcyclists and vehicles in wet or icy conditions. So most of our roundabouts, I think all of them, do not have grades on one of the roadways greater than 4%. And in particular, on Crystal Valley, we had to really work hard to lower the grade of Crystal Valley to build a roundabout at Plum Creek Boulevard. So that's something to consider and understand from a constraint standpoint. I think overbuilding is something we've dealt with. I mentioned earlier, it's okay to build the infrastructure for multiple lanes, but be aware that on an initial opening, you may not need all those lanes, and to avoid even the side swipe type crashes or angle crashes, we want to avoid those as much as possible. So this particular roundabout is operating level service A really well all day. We do not need these multiple circulating lanes, and we're actually restriping this this month to remove these through lanes such that you only have one circulating lane to kind of cut down and reduce those angle crashes. And that's a really low cost thing to do later. We can build the full infrastructure and use post and paint type low cost improvements to make adjustments. Our town council and leadership support is key. They are asking for roundabouts as an option, as a priority option. Also having the codified criteria about roundabout consideration is key for us to be successful in having developers build a lot of our roundabouts. And of course, council and leadership is the ones approving our budget. So when we lay out that 10-year plan and we have roundabouts in the mix every 3 years, it's important that they understand the value that they're going to get from that infrastructure. And then the public outreach and education, never miss an opportunity to get in front of the public and explain the benefits of roundabouts, hear their concerns, listen to why they feel like no one knows how to drive a roundabout, because they all feel like there's a lot of that. And this is just an example of a board that we had at a capital project open house that explained the benefits of a roundabout, and it was well received for that. With that, I did not include my contact information, but I'm sure Catherine or someone can get that for you if you have any questions and want to follow up, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Great presentation. So we already have a question from Greg. Greg, did you want to go ahead and ask your question, or I can read it off? It was about, does Castle
Sure,
Rock...
I'll
go
read
ahead.
it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I had to find my mic. I was just asking because I know that you have the automated traffic signal performance measures. Do you also have something that can automatically get the performance measures for your roundabouts?
We do not. We are, I've used the charts from the guide that I was talking about to kind of see the optimal, volume thresholds that you would want to see for multi-lane or bypass lane and that sort of thing. We're relying on, so like a modeling to determine level of service, as well as monitoring the crash history. So we do have crashes at our roundabouts, but they're all injury, at least they have been. And they are the highest crash locations of unsignalized locations. So those are the two performance measures that we're using at this point. I will say I don't have to worry about reliability, and low downtime of a roundabout like you would have with, a traffic signal, right? They're always operating, and I don't have to worry about the power going out.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, thanks. I have a quick question. One thing I've heard from just kind of in, just the field and from talking to people is just, like the experience of cyclists using roundabouts. How would you say that like that's community or that person using that mode has used the roundabouts in Castle Rock, and if there's been any safety concerns with that, or has that mode also been going well?
That mode has been going well. I'm going to jump back. Maybe this is a good image. So we do have we require ramps, exit ramps for cyclists. So if a cyclist has an option to either continue through the roundabout or transition to the sidewalk to go around the roundabout, and that is a part of our design standards, if you will, that you would need to provide. I haven't gotten any feedback from cyclists about issues they've had in a roundabout, and I've seen both. I've seen cyclists traverse through the roundabouts as well as use those side ramps.
Okay, great. And are those typically about like an 8 foot minimum or so on those paths, or
The
do you
side path is whatever it's either 8 or 10 feet.
You're saying 8 feet? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Eric?
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm curious about the volumes and like design characteristics, like the dimensions with diameter for the mini roundabout you have. I don't know offline if you'd be willing to share that data.
Sure. Yeah, we can share some information. You're talking about this one, right?
Right.
This, I think, has been very successful. And we were able, the first version of this roundabout took over all sorts of parking and was a much bigger footprint. And that was the feedback we got from the public as well. So we worked hard with the design team to reduce this as much as possible. I think it works well. We did build a second roundabout, which I'll bring you back to in our downtown area. Let's see, I lost my presentation. So this, I don't know, can you still see that?
No, sorry.
Uh-oh, did I stop sharing?
Hey, Jacob, I'll point out one thing. This is Tom with Castle Rock. On that mini roundabout, since we're able to reclaim some of that roadway space, we were actually able to squeeze out a couple of additional, we converted from parallel to angled, which really won over our Downtown Merchants Association because they value on-street parking a lot.
Cool.
Are you saying this is another roundabout we did in our downtown area that was the second version of that downtown roundabout? And it's a little bit bigger and has less parking. So, we could share both of these with you.
That'd be really great. Thank you.
I saw some other hands, and Ben had a question in the chat. We do have to keep moving on to other presentations. Jacob, would you mind trying to respond to those questions in the chat and hanging on to the meeting? That would be great. Yep. Awesome. Yep. Thank you. And I just wanted to, this side of the presentation was very much focused on, new and developing communities. However, I will say, and Jacob knows this, my mother-in-law lives in Castle Rock and in a more developed area, and she got a notice from her HOA that the city was, planning on installing a roundabout and would have to, acquire a little bit of land from the HOA, and they wanted to talk about it, but it was an area where there wasn't a building, wasn't going to be impacted, it was some green space, and it was at an intersection that everybody complained about because they had to wait forever for the traffic signal to turn. So, and I think that was funded, you said, by impact fees, not by, because there wasn't a development dedicating it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So other sources than just traditional developer land dedication. All right, so, it is great to have, lots of undeveloped land to be able to do whatever you want with, but there are certainly challenges in more developed areas and areas that have already been built. So next up, we have the City and County of Denver, Rolf, talking about how they are working to manage speeds on their arterial high entry network. Rolf, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm here. All right.
All right. Okay, great.
I'll take the screen and roll through this and try to get through in like 15 or so. We'll try to move a little quicker, but good morning, everybody. My name is Rolf Weisinger. I help manage Denver's Vision Zero program within the Department of Transportation Infrastructure and with a number of other folks. Eric's on the call and many others helping to advance our goal of zero. So without further ado, I'm just going to get started. Good to see several familiar faces, especially from the conference last week, and those who weren't able to attend the conference. This is the presentation, one of them that was provided. For those who did see it, apologize for the recap here, but yeah, just jumping on in here. So as a quick update for folks who aren't familiar with Denver's Vision Zero program, Denver pledged Vision Zero back in 2016, developed a 5-year action plan in 2017. I was hired in 2018. We've made significant progress in implementing many of the actions, but we've also learned a lot of lessons along the way. And more recently, Denver created a long-term transportation strategy, if you will, plan called Denver Moves Everyone. And during that public involvement process, we heard loud and clear from the community to recommit to Vision Zero, which led to the development of our latest action plan 2.0. And with that allowed us to really dive into a lot of the data that then led to our speed program that we'll be talking a little bit about here in a few minutes. So, and with this data, we saw that, yes, there's still a need, greater need than before for Vision Zero. But we also know that where we install projects that align with the Vision Zero principles, the safe system approach, we do see improvements. Traffic fatalities, though, have increased, particularly 2020, 2021, but, the last couple of years kind of held steady and even a little bit of a downward trend. And with trends, we definitely want to dive into the data. And last year, motorcyclists popped up as a mode overrepresented in the crash data. And this year we're seeing pedestrians, but actually pedestrians on the interstate is a trend that we are seeing. More to come with some of those later. So with that, again, using the data as part of as we dove into developing the latest Vision Zero action plan, we developed a high injury network. Many people are familiar with this. And with that, we created 2 tiers. Tier 1 is where we need to focus our energy and our resources the most, but Tier 2 is a bit of a canary in the coal mine, if you will. Hopefully, we'll track those, and the Tier 1s as we invest will fall down to a Tier 2, if not all the way off, and keep our thumb on the pulse with those Tier 2. Hopefully they do not become Tier 1 as we continue to invest resources. The other part of the action plan is we discovered that there's certain areas that also have a higher number of traffic fatalities and serious bodily injuries, and we define those as our safety focus areas. So for our downtown, that make up just 2% of land use, but 20% of our serious bodily injury and fatal crashes. So moving right along, and how about modes? So as we heard before with some of the data, our vulnerable roadway users overrepresented in traffic fatalities, but what we do see is riding transit is underrepresented and is the safest mode. So something that, make note of and trying to align our Vision Zero efforts with expanding transit service. Because, it doesn't matter if you're on your phone or maybe you had a drink or something, or you want to speed. It doesn't really matter because you literally have a professional driver getting you to where you need to go safely. So, but I will say the common denominator with almost every traffic fatality is that vehicle. So just keeping thumb on the pulse on that one. All right, pre-crash maneuvers. We just heard about roundabouts, and yes, the making the left turn crash, getting hit from the side, definitely overrepresented in our serious bodily injury crashes and fatalities. I won't dive into that as much, but also top contributing factors include substances, speeds, as we heard, and occupant protection. Kind of burning through these, trying to go a little quicker, but happy to answer questions at the end. But okay, so knowing all this data has really helped us prepare when our newish executive director asked us what it would take to reduce traffic fatalities by 50%. In addition to this data, we definitely needed a bit of a paradigm shift. We needed to be bold. We need to scale what works. We can't continue to do the same level of work and expect different results. Definitely need to bring our partners along and evaluate to ensure that we are reaching our expected results over time. So with that, all that information is on this slide that I just kind of went through. So I know this is very busy, but we went back to the data and we know which modes to focus on. We know where to focus on. We know pre-crash maneuvers and also the contributing factors. And out of those, we thought that speed was the one that we were able to mitigate the most with our engineering related improvements and some wraparound education too. Okay, so meanwhile, FHWA developed this designing and operating roadways for safe speeds training. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. And as part of this training, learned about as speed doubles, your reaction time doubles, and your stopping distance quadruples. And this very much shows, how far it takes to come to a stop and avoid a crash. So let's apply this to a real life example. For those of you who are familiar with Denver, we're going to jump up to 48th and Colorado. Colorado Boulevard is on our high entry network, and this may look familiar to many, folks, high entry network corridors or major arterials. But, before we get into the speed program here in a minute, just, wanted to highlight this quick exercise. So, all right, this is an image that if you were going the speed limit, which is 40 mile an hour south of this intersection, 45 to the north. But if you're going 40, it would take about 240 feet to come to a complete stop from, noticing that you need to stop, reacting, and coming to a full stop. Sure, there might be some variations on vehicle type and weight and braking or brakes, etc. But this is, ballpark. And with this, just kind of highlighting, this is how far out you'd have to start making that decision. And, question for the group, feel free and put in the chat. How many people do you see at this distance in terms of people walking, people biking, people scootering? Feel free and just put a number in the chat. Anybody? Any numbers? Any bold? Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. So now let's bring that speed down to 30 mile an hour. So it'd take significantly less distance to come to that stop. And now how many people do you see? We got a pedestrian here. We have somebody on a bicycle approaching the intersection over here. And we even have 2 pedestrians over here, so a total of four people. So not only as and we'll talk about this here in a minute about the kinetic energy, but even just the visual awareness and who we see. And there has been some very fascinating research coming out about human factors of being able to process and see information. As I'm sure this group is familiar, as you go faster, you become more tunnel visioned. And as you go slower, you start to see more things off to the periphery. But all that to say, yes, hopefully that kind of helped illustrate what speed does with being able to see vulnerable roadway users along streets. But yes, to what Catherine was talking about earlier, humans are vulnerable. And we have limited ability to tolerate crash impacts before harm occurs. And we just kind of heard about from Catherine about the kinetic energy, etc. I did want to bring up the numbers about. I did have it up. Kind of fascinating, if you will, but I picked this up from another training. But horsepower with vehicles. So comparing a vehicle back in like the 70s to today. So basically, the point I'm trying to make was a supercar in the 70s. So like a Lamborghini had about 375 horsepower, and would have cost in today's dollars like 340,000. So not necessarily very accessible to most people. So 375 horsepower. Well, the Toyota Camry today, you can get for about 36,000. and it has, upwards of 300 horsepower. But even a Ford Mustang at $44,000 today has almost 500 horsepower right off the lot. So you're talking about a car today that exceeds that Lamborghini horsepower back in the 70s, and what that means. So just kind of fascinating about car evolution and the amount of power that the kind of off the lot, accessible price range car has that we're seeing on the roadways today. But okay, I really appreciate this graphic about the safe system approach. Really brings it home about adding additional layers. The more layers you have, the greater chance that we are able to prevent that serious or fatal injury from happening. And now let's get into the speed program. So with that, our executive director and our mayor drew a line in the sand, or really went out there and promoted the fact that we are going to reduce traffic fatalities in Denver. So definitely a bold statement, which was great because it really provided staff a platform in order to really identify the resources, build the teams, and use all that data and come up with some mini quick improvements along our high injury network corridor. And with that, these were the ideas on the left-hand side for a high injury network corridor. And then we were going after our safety focus area improvements through a Safer Streets for All grant that we're still working through. It was awarded, but now working through some legal requirements and making sure we have access to those funds. We'll get into what all these are in a minute. But the question was, yes, we wanted to do all the high injury network corridors, but we had to scale it down based on capacity, staff capacity, and existing resources. And with that, we chose 2 corridors to focus on. They included Federal Boulevard and Alameda. So why these corridors? Why not Colfax? Well, Colfax has significant investment already occurring on it, with not only some of the West Colfax improvements, but also the East Colfax bus rapid transit project. And then we wanted to work on a state highway with the state. We knew that we needed to partner with them early and often. So therefore we chose one corridor that was fully a state-owned facility. So that was Federal Boulevard. And then also Alameda. So that was the next one on the list that had segments that were locally owned. So we thought maybe we can move quicker. Yeah, so with that, being able to advance these 2 corridors with the speed program. And with that, we looked at some speed, and again, bring your partners along, and appreciate CDOT's support in doing a speed compliance study. And with that, we're seeing less than 20% speed compliance at a couple locations. And the other thing I'd bring up when you're looking at speed is looking at by the hour. You may get a 24-hour count, and you may see that 8 or 7% are excessive speeding. But when you look at those early morning hours, most likely you'll see that jumps up to 20% that are excessive speeding. That's 10 or more mile an hour over the posted speed limit, or even 25 or beyond. So looking at those late night hours when oftentimes those serious and fatal crashes occur. So just kind of rounding out the acronym of the speed, and then hand it back over to Catherine. But so the S stands for saturating our corridor with speed limit signs, so folks know what the speed limit is. And then following up with driver feedback signs, and then starting a marketing program. So we heard earlier in the call about education. So following up with, let's see here, next slide, billboard campaign. So this is not a standalone. This is kind of a wraparound effort so that we are communicating with the motoring public, but also as they drive by this, they would get a message on their phone once they're in a safe spot, and they're on their phone messaging about signing up for the For the Love of Safety pledge. We even mailed out information about this in utility bills, our WasteWise bills, and we continue to promote the Slow Down for the Love of Safety campaign during other outreach events. So trying to reach community where they're at in a number of different ways. So going through the acronym here, P is for program traffic signals. Many of us have heard about this, but slowing vehicles down to the posted speed limit. So props to Eric and team for really leaning into this and being able to design and retime our lights. So that if you do the speed limit, you'll get green. And if you exceed the speed limit, the idea is that you'll slow down because there's a red light. Also engineering, a signal timing. So again, P, and then E. So the late night. For shorter lengths, so eliminating kind of that rest on green opportunity for excessive speeding. And then we go into the final E, which is expanding the lead pedestrian intervals along the corridor and providing a head start for pedestrians. And the final letter is D, and that stands for deploying speed safety cameras. And that is something that we are currently working on with an internal team right now with the new state law going into effect a little while ago. So with that, I know it kind of went a little quicker, but want to give additional time to the rest of the presenters. But thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rolf. Jacob had a question. Do you have an operation plan to turn off the speed feedback signs periodically so they don't become too familiar? That's a good one.
That's a great question. We're still we're going to follow with some evaluation, and with that, I think as we determine how they are effective, or if we need to move them, or whatever that may be, we'll cross that bridge. But that's a really good point. Thank you.
I had a quick question. How did you decide on these treatments rather than, something like a road diet or something bigger? How did you all land on these strategies?
Yeah, no, I mean, these were supposed to be deployed relatively quickly. And something that we thought that would have an impact on speed, the root cause that we were trying to change that behavior, and basically things that we could do with limited funding in a short amount of time, and pair as many of these together. Some of the other things didn't mention, but we did do would be daylighting intersections, providing high-vis crosswalks where we could, doing some other pavement marking. But yeah, so these were things that, yes, hopefully in the future, another bus rapid transit type of project that could completely revolutionize the way that this facility operates and changes it for the better in terms of safety. Great, but what can we do today, this year?
All right, I think we have time for one more question if anybody else has anything. Okay, well, feel free to put them in the chat, and Rolf, if you don't mind sticking around in case anybody has anything else. Thank you so much. I feel so lucky to have these amazing examples in the region that we get to draw upon. So thank you for your time and for sharing, all of your lessons learned. All right, in our last 15 minutes, let me share my screen again. Okay, I was just going to give a quick update on the Vision Zero quick build or quick win toolkit. Last week we had a focus group meeting with several folks, many of whom are on this call from Douglas County, Adams County, Longmont, Denver, other folks, and we talked about how should we define quick build and what should the scope of this toolkit be. And so we landed on quick build being no shovel required, easily reversible, including changes to signage and striping, bollards, temporary materials, as well as potentially some changes to traffic signals, kind of like what Rolf just talked about, that can be done by in-house crews, and then more durability than you might think of with like a demonstration project. For the scope of the toolkit, the most important elements that were identified by folks was when a quick build may be appropriate, and also I think just calling out its importance for Vision Zero. Some of these projects are not necessarily fast, but they are lower cost, meaning you can do a lot more. And really, in order for us to really start to make an impact on Vision Zero, we need to be doing more, hitting more corridors, hitting more locations, and making that money go further. A lot of interest in learning about what people have, learned from quick build materials, what works well. Other more general lessons learned about, why some communities seem to be doing a lot, what common barriers might be. quick build tool, projects are not always the prettiest. And so I think some communities looking at Boulder and others have had some success incorporating public art into the projects, making them look more appealing, also just helping to bring the community together. And so how do they accomplish that? Public outreach and messaging tips and just importance, also standard details. So there can be a lot in this toolkit. We also have some other elements that could be included. So that could include an inventory of proven safety treatments that I'm calling these quick build or quick win. So you wouldn't say that, traffic signal retiming is a quick build, but it can be a quick win depending on the scope and the technology and all sorts of other conditions. But also including like crash modification factors. So if people are interested in saying what's been proven, what has the biggest impact, and kind of doing like what Denver did about then tailoring their own toolkit that they want to focus on. That inventory could be used for that purpose. Another potential element, so you've adopted a plan, now what? How do you go about if you want to improve specific corridors or if you want to do something that applies a treatment system wide or across many locations? What are kind of the steps? And then before and after project evaluation template. So if there are any of these that you think are particularly important for you for your community, I would be really interested in knowing that. I know we are limited on time, so please reach out to me via email or just in this in the chat to let me know if there's anything in here that you think is particularly important, only because this is a lot, and so a lot of content, and so it'll be about making it a cohesive, relevant document. Okay, so with that, I'm hoping to get this out for the working group's review later this fall and to finalize and have this document posted online early next year. So hopefully we'll be able to get this in your hands relatively quickly. All right, with that, we're going to conclude with some news and updates. Erin here at DRCOG is going to give an update on the draft Regional Active Transportation Plan. And then Nora is going to talk about an upcoming community-based transportation plan call for projects. Erin, are you ready?
Sure am.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I might just speed run my slides really quickly so that Nora has plenty of time. But yeah, we released on August the 1st, we released our draft of the Regional Active Transportation Plan. This is a major update. The last time it was adopted was in 2019, and the world has changed quite a bit. So we're very excited to have a draft plan out in the world, and I'm excited to just encourage you all, to go to the engagement website and comment on the plan, but B, also to share it with your networks and help us get the word out. So let's see how quickly I can run through these. All right, so the purpose behind the plan is active transportation keeps the region moving. The plan sets up, what's the need. It kind of has a lot of that discussion about, what are we trying to accomplish with this? And of course, one of the big mandates of the plan is really delivering on safety and reaching our Regional Vision Zero commitments. So it has a lot of impact on the work you all are doing, as we've discussed. And the sort of crux of the plan is the Regional Active Transportation Network. This is a three-part plan, and there's lots of information about what those components are, but this is really intended to drive local planning, or to inform local planning, to drive regional investments, specifically through the TIP program and other planning efforts that we do. And so I'm just going to keep running through these, but it has this regional network has a lot of use cases to help guide local planning, to strengthen interjurisdictional coordination, and then of course to help leverage funding for active transportation projects. It's the three parts of it are the pedestrian focus areas, which are areas that were identified through a mix of land use and demographic and activity factors and safety. Crashes in the regional high injury network were part of the inputs that went into this. Short trip opportunity zones are where we see high concentrations of trips less than 2 miles that are competitive by active modes. This is bicycling and walking and scootering and rolling and all those fun things, where we see opportunities to shift travel and work towards that systemic safety piece that Rolf was talking about. Especially. And then, of course, the regional corridors that really are, that we're looking to create linear spines throughout the region that are aligned with local plans. They anticipate growth, and they provide consistent access and coverage.
The plan also is anchored around, you do not need to read all of this right now. I just wanted to put them up around the policy and program actions. So we have sort of 10 organizing actions that we really implement. They guide our UPWP, they inform staffing decisions and the kinds of work that we undertake, and they suggest actions for DRCOG planning efforts and policies. So this was a very fast run through it, but the important thing that I want you to take away is that we have an engagement page that I've just dropped into the chat that is engage.drcog.org/ATP, and the draft plan is on that engagement page, all the supporting documents, and there are forums to drop comments. You can also, of course, send comments to me. With that, that is my contact information. If you have any questions after this meeting, please do feel free. I encourage you to follow up with me. I'm happy to discuss or support or do any, have any conversations that you'd like to have. And please do review the plan and help us get the word out. So with that, I did it in 4 minutes, and I will open up the floor for questions.
Sorry to rush you, Aaron. You did a good
Not
job.
at all. I'm going to drop my email in the chat box as well, in case anyone would like to follow up with me directly.
Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or reach out to us. Nora, are you here and ready to talk about your effort? Okay, great.
Yeah, just a quick PSA, more info about this to come, but since this I think might be the last meeting before our call for projects, wanted to let folks know. But we are going to be doing a joint call for projects for 3 of our technical assistance programs, which we call our TIP set-asides. Those are our community-based transportation planning program, which is focused on addressing mobility challenges for marginalized communities, our livable centers program, which is focused on kind of the nexus between urban centers and land use and transportation, and then our innovative mobility set aside, which is focused on innovative mobility. So all 3 are going to kind of have a joint call for projects opening this October. So I'll post the link to our website where you can learn more about those if you aren't aware of them yet. We will be sending out much more information to folks on different mailing lists about all the details of how to apply, the funds available, and the specifics for each program. But the key note is these are programs where there's no local match. DRCOG will help manage the projects to kind of support the local agencies. So it's a really great opportunity if you have some plans or studies or analyses that you've been hoping to do or that would help you move forward some of your projects. We'd love to help you with that. So again, the joint call for projects is going to open for all 3 programs in October and run through Thanksgiving. So have plenty of time to learn about it and to think of some good projects. So thanks.
Thank you. And with that, we'll open it up to any final questions or news that anybody else has that they would like to share, any successes that we can celebrate. If not, we can close it out. Our next meeting. Oh, yeah. Eric, do you want to give a call out?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, it just dropped in the chat. As many of you know, we have had a survey for our DRCOG Crash Data Dashboard available, and we did extend it just a couple of weeks to kind of capture this group again. So that link is in the chat. If you haven't had the chance to complete that yet, it's pretty short. I'd say probably 5 minutes. So just kind of seeing what functions you use, if you used it, what you may like to see. We're planning to have this updated with whatever we think we can make work within the platform, as well as adding in the 2024 crash data sometime in October. So if you have any thoughts on that, please take that survey. Or of course, you can always just reach out to Catherine or myself. Right, that's all. Thanks.
One final thing that I have too is that we received the 2024 crash data from CDOT, and so our GIS team is actively working on going through that to do quality control, geocode what additional crashes they can. I think focusing on vulnerable road users and the fatal severe crashes, and that should be released in the next couple months. So, and we hope to talk about that and those findings at the next meeting. All right. Well, with that, we'll close it out. Thank you all for your time. We look forward to seeing you all at our next meeting on October 14th. Everybody have a good day.